right now, like as you listen to this, your fingernails are growing.
Which is, a pretty weird way to start, but,
No, but stick with me. So deep beneath the eastern Pacific Ocean, roughly 1,000 miles west of Ecuador, there are these two massive continent-sized tectonic plates.
Right, the Pacific and Nazca plates.
Exactly. And they are grinding past each other at the exact same agonizingly slow speed that your fingernails grow.
Yeah, which is about 140 millimeters per year.
Right. Yet somehow that absolute snail's pace acts as this flawless ticking clock for a violent magnitude 6 earthquake.
It really is one of the most baffling mechanical paradoxes in geology. I mean, you have this incredibly slow, creeping background motion, right?
Yeah.
And somehow it predictably and reliably translates into a massive, sudden rupture.
And that is exactly what we are going to figure out today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. Our mission today is to understand a newly discovered, completely natural mechanism that physically stops massive earthquakes from getting even bigger.
Which is huge for the scientific community.
Massive. And we are basing our investigation today on a breakthrough study published in the journal Science, which was just detailed in a May 16th, 2026 article by Science Daily.
Right. And we're looking at a physical process that, quite honestly, fundamentally challenges how we model tectonic ruptures.
Yeah, because for a long time, seismology has basically been about, observing the chaos.
Exactly. But the researchers behind this study, they've actually found natural built-in breaks inside the Earth's crust that control that chaos.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the scene of the crime here, the Gofar transform fault, is just bizarre.
It is entirely unique.
Right, so for at least 30 years, scientists have been watching this specific underwater boundary between the Pacific and Nazca plates. And every 5 to 6 years, almost like clockwork, it produces a magnitude 6 earthquake.
Yeah, but it's not just the timing that's weird, right?
No, exactly. It's the physical footprint, too.
What's fascinating here is the sheer consistency of it. Because when a typical fault ruptures, the massive release of energy alters the stress along the entire surrounding rock face.
Right, it kind of scrambles everything up.
Exactly. It changes the geometry of the fault, it fractures new pathways, it shifts the load, so the next earthquake might be bigger, or maybe smaller, or located miles down the line.
But at Gofar, these quakes are repeatedly rupturing in nearly the exact same sections of the fault.
Yeah, and they hit nearly the identical magnitude 6 every single time.
It's like a loop. It resets, ticks down for half a decade, and boom, same spot, same size.
Which means the geometry isn't changing. It's not fracturing those new pathways like a typical fault would.
It's just locked into this perfect repeating cycle.
Right. And scientists, they knew a small piece of the puzzle already. They observed that between the specific sections of the Gofar Fault, where these magnitude 6 earthquakes kept detonating, there were these quieter stretches of rock.
Okay, so like empty spaces between the blast zones.
Sort of, yeah. They designated these quieter stretches as barriers.
Barriers. Okay, so the data showed these barrier regions were absorbing the immense tectonic stress of the plates, but they were doing it without producing large ruptures themselves.
Exactly. They were somehow isolating the quakes.
But the mystery that plagued seismologists was the actual mechanics of it.
Right. Because nobody knew what these barriers were physically made of. Or, why they could stop a magnitude 6 earthquake in its tracks, cycle after cycle, without eventually just snapping under all that accumulated pressure.
Which makes total sense. And honestly, I'm struggling with the methodology here.
How so?
Well, if these barriers are absorbing all that tectonic stress, how did scientists know they aren't just acting like giant geological springs?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like, what if they were just storing up all that fingernail speed tension for a massive, catastrophic magnitude 8 rupture later on?
That is the pivotal question, actually. And to prove these barriers were acting as a permanent break and not just a temporary sponge, you need incredibly granular data from directly on top of the fault.
Which you obviously can't get from a satellite.
No, definitely not. And you can't get it from a land-based seismometer in South America either.
And you certainly can't hold your breath and walk down to inspect a fault line at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Exactly. You literally have to bring the laboratory to the seafloor.
Which sounds impossible.
It's incredibly difficult. It required a massive collaborative effort led by this seismologist, Jianhua Gong, from Indiana University.
Right. The source mentioned he assembled this huge consortium of researchers.
Oh, yeah, it was a small army. You had folks from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Scripps, the U.S. Geological Survey, Boston College, the University of Delaware,
Wow, okay.
and Western Washington University, the University of New Hampshire, and McGill University.
Just managing the logistics of that many institutions is a feat in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
But the actual deep-sea stakeout is what really fascinates me here. Because they relied on data collected during two entirely separate seafloor experiments.
Right. There was one in 2008 and then a second one spanning 2019 to 2022.
So wait, that is a massive 12-year gap in observation. Why take so long to go back?
Well, that gap was, it was both a logistical limitation and a scientific necessity.
A necessity? How so?
To answer your earlier question about whether this fault was just storing up energy for a megaquake, they needed to observe multiple complete cycles.
Oh, I get it. To prove repeatability.
Exactly. By capturing the 2008 cycle and then returning to capture the 2019 to 2022 cycle, they could confirm that the barriers were consistently bleeding off the energy, not hoarding it.
Okay, that makes sense. So they needed highly specialized instruments down there for both of those deployments.
Right. They used what are called ocean bottom seismometers, or OBS units.
Okay, and what exactly are those?
They are these incredibly complex, highly pressurized devices designed to sink miles down into the crushing dark of the oceanic trenches.
Just free falling down into the abyss.
Yeah, pretty much. They bed down in the sediment directly on the fault line, and they just listen.
It's like leaving a highly sensitive microphone on a really busy factory floor.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like, it allows the researchers to filter out the roar of the massive tectonic machines just to hear individual screws vibrating loose.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. And what those deep-sea microphones captured was totally unprecedented.
Because they didn't just record the main magnitude 6 events.
No, not at all. Across those two separate cycles, they captured tens of thousands of tiny microscopic earthquakes occurring both before and after the major ruptures.
Tens of thousands. That is wild. That basically gives you a high-definition acoustic map of the fault.
It does. And hidden in that acoustic map was a distinct, repeatable pattern, isolated purely within those quiet barrier zones.
Okay, what was the pattern?
In the days and weeks right before the major magnitude 6 earthquake hit, the barrier zones suddenly experienced these frantic bursts of microseismic activity.
Like thousands of tiny tremors just waking up.
Exactly. But then, immediately after the large magnitude 6 quake occurred, those exact same barrier regions went completely, entirely silent.
Wow, total silence.
Total silence.
So the rock itself is changing state. I mean, the silence tells you the barrier isn't just sitting there passively taking the hit. It is physically reacting to the main quake.
The silence was the smoking gun. It absolutely proved the barriers were an active defense mechanism.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because we need to look at what these barriers actually look like.
Yeah, the physical structure is the key to the whole thing.
Right, because the researchers discovered that these quiet zones are not solid, unbreakable chunks of rock like you might intuitively assume.
No, they're the complete opposite.
Instead, the barriers are these incredibly messy, highly complex areas where the fault line literally splinters apart.
Yeah, the main fault plane just shatters into multiple different strands.
Think of it like a single massive highway that suddenly hits a highly fractured damage zone and splits into several different winding side roads that just kind of run parallel to each other.
That's exactly it. And the researchers measured the sideways offsets between these splintered strands at roughly 100 to 400 meters wide.
That is a massive gap.
It is. And the sheer mechanical force of the grinding plates creates these localized, shattered zones.
And because this is happening at the bottom of the ocean, those 400-meter deep fractures aren't empty.
No, they're completely flooded.
Right. They are flooded with highly pressurized seawater that has seeped miles down deep into the porous rock.
Which completely changes the entire dynamic of the fault. We are no longer talking about two dry, solid rocks scraping against each other.
Right. We are talking about a complex, splintered geometry combined with trapped fluids.
And that specific combination creates the conditions for the actual breaking mechanism, which the study identifies as dilatancy strengthening.
Okay, dilatancy strengthening. I want to try and visualize this because when I read about how this trapped water interacts with the sudden, violent movement of the earthquake, my first thought was, like, the anti-lock braking system in a car.
Oh, the ABS. Okay, let's explore that.
Yeah, because when you slam on the brakes, the ABS pumps the fluid pressure rapidly so the wheels don't just lock up and skid, right? It actively manages the internal fluid pressure to stop the momentum.
It's an active hydraulic response to sudden motion, yes.
Right.
But the actual physics at play in the rock work almost in reverse to an ABS system.
Wait, in reverse, because the rock wants to lock up.
Exactly.
So if I'm picturing this right, the water isn't lubricating the fault, it's actually creating a vacuum effect.
That's it. It's highly counterintuitive because we generally think of water as a lubricant.
Oh, okay. Think about trying to quickly pull apart two completely wet panes of glass.
Yes, perfect example.
Like, if you slide them apart slowly, the water has time to shift, and they separate pretty easily.
Right.
But if you try to forcefully yank those wet panes of glass apart as fast as you can, they instantly lock together. The water creates this suction seal.
Exactly. The fluid dynamics literally halt your momentum.
That is so cool.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of dilatancy strengthening. So let's walk through exactly how Jan Wagon's team mapped this process inside the Gofar fault.
Okay, let's do it.
The fault is creeping at the speed of that growing fingernail we talked about. Tension builds up over 5 years.
Tick, tick, tick.
Right. Finally, a clean section of the fault snaps, unleashing the magnitude 6 earthquake.
And the rupture starts tearing down the fault line, accelerating.
It's spreading fast, and it's carrying enough kinetic energy to potentially grow into a magnitude 7 or even an 8.
Which would be a massive.
Huge. But then, the rupture hits one of these barrier zones.
The messy, splintered areas with the 400-meter side roads filled with deep seawater.
Exactly. And as the sudden, violent shockwave of the earthquake hits the zone, it forcefully jolts and shifts those gaps. It causes the pore spaces inside this fluid-filled rock to rapidly expand.
And just like yanking the wet panes of glass apart, the internal space expands, but the seawater can't rush in fast enough to fill the new void.
Precisely. Because the microscopic spaces inside the rock expand faster than the fluid can fill them, you get a massive, instantaneous drop in fluid pressure inside the rock.
Oh, wow.
And as that internal pressure plummets, the porous rock temporarily locks up tight. The friction within the fault skyrockets exponentially.
So in a fraction of a second, the drop in pressure creates that vacuum seal.
Dilatancy strengthening acts as a dynamic built-in brake. It physically absorbs the kinetic energy and stops the rupture from spreading any further down the line.
It is literally a hydraulic brake built into the Earth's crust. That is amazing.
It really is.
The earthquake tries to rip the watery rock apart, the pressure plummets, the rock locks up, and the earthquake is stopped dead in its tracks at a magnitude 6.
Yep.
That perfectly explains the anomaly. That is why it stops in the exact same place at the exact same size every single time.
As the lead author Jian Huagang explained, these barriers are not just passive features of the landscape. They are active, dynamic parts of the fault system.
It's a living system, almost.
Basically, yeah. And understanding how they trigger this pressure drop braking system completely changes how we think about the absolute maximum limits of earthquakes.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic for a second, though.
Go for it.
Because, look, this is a brilliant piece of geological detective work. The mechanics of the watery breaks are fascinating. But the Gofar Fault is 1,000 miles away from the nearest populated coastline.
True.
It's miles deep. These specific earthquakes pose absolutely no direct threat to human life. So what does this all mean for us? Why should you, listening to this right now, care about an underwater rock locking up in the middle of nowhere?
It's a very fair question. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the implications of this study are massive for coastal safety.
Okay, how so?
Well, transformed faults like the Gofar Fault don't just exist in one isolated pocket. They form a vast network across all of the Earth's oceans.
Oh, right. They're everywhere.
Everywhere. And for years, seismologists have noticed a highly suspicious trend.
Which is?
Underwater earthquakes along these oceanic faults consistently remain much smaller than their geological conditions suggest they should be.
Meaning you have a fault line that is structurally long enough to produce a massive, devastating quake, but it mysteriously tacks out at a moderate magnitude.
Right. Scientists have long suspected that some unknown natural mechanism was capping their maximum size.
And this is that mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This study, which, by the way, was heavily funded by both the U.S. National Science Foundation and the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, finally proves what that cap is.
The splintered barrier zones.
Yes, the splintered barrier zones found at Gofar are extremely common across the ocean floor.
Which means this widespread system of natural hydraulic breaks is actively working all over the globe, preventing countless ruptures from escalating into megaquakes.
And that is exactly why this matters to you. By proving that these natural earthquake limits exist, and by mapping the exact fluid dynamics of how dilatancy strengthening triggers those limits, researchers can now fundamentally upgrade global earthquake models.
Ah, okay. So instead of just looking at historical data and making a statistical guess, they can actually plug the physics of delta-sea strengthening into the predictive algorithms.
Exactly. It moves hazard prediction from statistical guesswork to actual physics-based modeling.
That is a huge leap.
It's massive. This discovery will drastically improve how we estimate seismic hazards for underwater faults worldwide.
Right.
And crucially, that includes the offshore fault lines that are located dangerously close to major coastal populations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If we know the precise signature of what a break zone looks like, the microquake chatter, the splinter geometry, we can actively scan for them near coastal cities.
We can determine if a fault near a major city has these natural breaks built in, which basically tells us the true maximum threat that fault actually poses.
Exactly. It completely redefines urban risk assessment.
That is incredible. It takes this bizarre ticking anomaly from the middle of nowhere and turns it into a mathematical key that could unlock safer coastal modeling everywhere.
It's science at its best.
Truly. So just to recap the journey we've been on today, we started with a mysteriously precise fault line, creeping along at the excruciatingly slow speed of growing human fingernails.
Yep, 140 millimeters a year.
Right, and somehow producing perfect clockwork magnitude 6 earthquakes for over 30 years.
And then we follow the researchers who spent 12 years dropping complex seismometers into the crushing depths of the ocean.
Just listening to tens of thousands of microquakes.
Exactly. Proving the fault wasn't just storing energy, but actively bleeding it off.
And that acoustic map led us to the discovery of these messy, splintered 400-meter watery gaps inside the fault. Gaps that, when violently shaken by an earthquake, expand so fast they trigger a massive drop in fluid pressure.
Causing dilatancy strengthening.
Right. They literally lock the rock and hit the brakes on the rupture before it can become a monster.
Which brings us to a really compelling thought, and it's what I want to leave you with today.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
Well, since we now know that complex fluid-filled geometries naturally trigger this vacuum-like braking to halt massive tectonic ruptures, could we eventually map the exact geometry and water content of the faults closer to our major cities?
Okay.
If we could read the plumbing of a fault, would it allow us to predict its absolute maximum earthquake limit with total certainty?
Wow, that alone would completely revolutionize how we build our cities and prepare for disasters.
Right, but you can even take it a step further into the realm of human engineering.
Wait, human engineering?
Yeah, if we fully understand the physics of how a sudden drop in fluid pressure stops an earthquake in its tracks, could future humans ever find a way to artificially replicate this braking system?
Oh my goodness.
Could we one day drill down and intentionally manipulate the fluid pressure inside a dangerous fault to trigger dilatancy strengthening on command?
Imagine actively stopping a disastrous quake before it ever reaches the surface.
It sounds like pure science fiction, but today we learned that the Earth is already engineering it right beneath the ocean.
Nature already designed the brakes.
We just finally figured out how to read the blueprints.
It makes you wonder what other mechanical secrets are hiding in the dark, pressurized depths of our own planet. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Keep questioning the world beneath your feet, and we'll catch you next time.